Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Shed Geek Podcast in studio. Guys, check this out. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're not, you should be, but you should really check out the studio space today. So I'm here in Iowa City with Gary. Gary, you want to introduce yourself to the audience, just a little bit about who you are and what you do?
My name is Gary Bontrager. I grew up probably about 15 miles from here on a hog and dairy farm in the Plain community south of Iowa City, and was taught a lot of hard work. And through a lot of things in life, I ended up, I still own insurance agencies, but I ended up getting into the consulting and coaching space. So one of my main focuses right now is Gary Bontrager Consulting.
Okay.
And I do work with a lot of contractors, construction, even repair shops, anything that is really a hands-on trade. Those are kind of our target markets. And out of that, we also have a Mindset Growth podcast that we do. So I'm a bit of a busy person, but I've got some really good people I work with that make life easy and fun. So it's that's kind of a quick bombshell of it, but
Yeah.
There's a lot of layers to it.
Very nice. Yeah, this was what's interesting is we're doing two podcasts today. I'm interviewing you and how that relates to the shed industry, which is an industry you do consultation in. But then I was a guest on yours, and I was nervous. I just want you to know, I'm like reminded whenever I ask people to be on the podcast, like why they're nervous, because I'm like, oh, we're just campfire storytelling. Just sit down and have a conversation, and we'll edit it all up, send it to you. Make sure you like it if you want. I was nervous. I was thinking about the questions,
Really?
and I was like, yeah, I feel like I know what they went through now, because I'm not nervous hosting, but I was nervous being a guest. That was great. I enjoyed it and appreciate you having me on there.
I'm typically more relaxed just because I feel like the pressure's off. Only you can screw it up. I can't.
Right. No, well, I promise you, I can find a way to do that. So just give me a little bit of time. No, I appreciate that so much, and really just meeting a fellow podcaster. That's kind of cool, because I bet no one can go back to their school days and their mentors and guidance counselors and whatnot and say, yeah, I want to be a podcaster. Whenever I get older, it's such an odd thing to end up in this space. It can only happen through the chart of course that you took in life, right?
Right.
So what kind of led you start there, just into like the idea of podcasting and how that reach does and would matter?
So what's interesting, I actually started under Century Insurance, and a lot of it was even creating shorter, just video clips of information that were a lot of questions that people ask every time they walked in our door. And then I started having a few guests on, and it was just, in my mind, I was going to try to use it as a marketing tool. And it was somewhat new at that point. This has been probably 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago when we started that. And it never really gained the traction maybe that I was hoping for, but I think I also didn't have any idea what I was trying to accomplish. And so it went maybe a bit dormant for a little bit. And meantime, in 2019, I started Gary Bontrager Consulting. And it just, that coaching business has just taken off tremendously. And it was through that I realized that was a good tool to use to help educate and connect people. And it was probably similar to what you do, but it's a way to take maybe industry folks that they work together, or based off of the podcast then, which is why we came up with the name Mindset Growth. Mm-hmm. I can go back to the story why we chose that name. So, at 15, I'd lost my father. And growing up on a hog and dairy and fairly large row crop farm at that time, it was myself and an 18-year-old brother with 3 younger siblings. The older kids were out of the house, so we had 8 kids in our family. And the stress and the pressure I felt at that point, because I realized as a 15-year-old kid that, if I don't take care of the livestock correctly and do things, it's on me. There's no safety net.
Uh-huh.
My father's no longer here to make sure I'm doing my job. And it just took me, I think part of it was age, maybe part of it was culture. But it took me down a really dark path to where I questioned whether it was worth living or not. And as I sat under the tree that day, I made a decision because of the words my father shared with me. And that was that even though I wasn't necessarily considered the smart kid, in fact, I wasn't. I was the dumb kid in school. And more so because I didn't apply myself, but even a lot of that was just how I learn is
I can identify with all of what you're saying right now. Yeah.
So it was just very different. I learned so differently than a lot of people. And sometimes it is harder for me to retain certain things. But I made a commitment that day that I would learn something new and be a better person every day. And so therefore, based all the way back to that, is where I come with the mindset growth. And I had to change the way I thought, what my mindset was about my situation I was in. And it's something that just has evolved and evolved day after day, year after year. And here I am, an old man now. But I've had the privilege of having that commitment from what my father taught me in 15 years to push forward and to better myself every day.
Hey guys, this is the Shed Geek, and I'm here to tell you about the latest in financial innovation to hit the shed industry. It's a program called Backyard Finance. Everywhere I go, shed manufacturers and shed sellers are always asking, how can I get a better payment option for my customer? At Backyard Finance, they're making this a reality. You might be asking, how do I sign up? Simple, just go to Backyard Finance, click on the Get Started Now button, and create an account. After that, you'll have 200 plus banks competing to give your customer the best financial terms possible. With Backyard Finance, you can service your customers two ways: direct to customer lending or direct to merchant lending. With direct to merchant lending, simply fill out an application. It takes about 2 to 4 weeks to process that application, but it'll allow you a variety of financing options to make you a more competitive retailer. With FICO scores as low as 500, 600, or 700 plus, your customers will receive financing options with APRs as low as 2.99% or as high as 29.99%. Credit applications are approved in just 15 to 45 seconds. To know more, contact Backyard Finance at 833-692-2286 or email info@backyardfinance.com today. Backyard Finance, funding backyard dreams. We didn't even really, we didn't necessarily touch on this. Me and you could probably have a 8-hour podcast. I believe we could honestly do that easily.
I purposely didn't ask you some questions. I knew we'd never get through them.
I mean, it's harder to get two talkers together. I wasn't always this way. I was shy sort of as a kid, so it's the life experiences that I had that brought me to this, and particularly one that we were talking about was sales, or
right.
Customer service. That kind of brought me out of my shell. But no, I can identify with all that. So I struggled with math. Being a creative type, I always think about the quote. I love quotes. I think about the Albert Einstein quote. You can judge, if you judge an elephant by his ability to climb a tree, he's always going to fail.
Right.
You put a monkey in that spot, he's going to succeed. But, a monkey can only do what a monkey can do, right?
Right.
An elephant, the rest is a struggle. Math was a struggle for me as a good example. And I remember actually my 6th grade math teacher, I started struggling with long division in 5th grade. And I remember in 6th grade, I had gotten really, really bad at math, and I got embarrassed because I was bad, and I'd have to go to the teacher to ask for help. And I remember she would get so frustrated with me. My daughter needs to listen to this. She's going into education. She got so frustrated with me. I remember one time she asked me to go across the hallway to ask the special education teacher if there was any room in his class. And I realized now that as I got older, she wasn't doing that because she was genuinely trying to ask me, or she was trying to embarrass me. I realized that now, that there was a whole process for me to go into the special education program. It wouldn't have been because of
you asked.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, it was more of a hey, you'll be embarrassed in front of your peers. And it worked, but not in a point that she wanted it to, that
right.
she maybe thought that it would make me learn, make me
right.
more dedicated. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the dedication wasn't the problem. The problem was a creative mind that was going in too many
right.
different places to be able to focus.
Right.
So it wasn't, like you said, it was for lack of being able to learn. It was And so what I learned how to do then was cheat
Yes, I learned
to
do
avoid the
that.
embarrassment.
Yeah,
you
I learned
know?
to cheat really well.
Yeah, I developed myself to try and have friends around me that I could get their grades from, and a defense mechanism. That's what it
Right.
became. And then there's certain areas of math that I still struggle with today because of that. So I identify with that, but then I also identify with the trying to place the value on your life. I found myself, and I've never told this story on the Shed Geek podcast, but even Kyle, who I started the show with, me and him kind of connected through our testimonies in church, and come to find out, we had both found ourselves on the same stretch of road, contemplating is life worth living?
Right.
And it was within a year of each other and within 10 miles of the same spot that we both came to that. And we didn't know each other at the time.
Wow, that's incredible.
We met each other in church, and that's what kind of built out the friendship and the relationship. And
I would go back on the education piece, though.
yeah,
You said you learned to cheat.
yeah,
But with being a creative person, I will promise you it's probably really helped some foundational benefits for you now in this entrepreneurial space
yeah.
to learn how to be creative. And I think it wasn't all wasted. I mean, that's how I view
Yeah,
it for
yeah.
myself.
No,
I go
that's
back
good.
and I go, did it make me a bad person? Well, not really. It created an environment for me to be very creative. Even more so because I had to learn how to try to get
Manipulate.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that can be bad, but it's not all
Well, you
bad.
can manipulate for good or bad. And I like to say all the time, a manipulator and someone who's been good at it can spot it in others. That's why a lot of times if I'm quiet or cautious, it's just because I may have some feelings on something, and I'm
Right.
like, I don't know that I trust that. I'll let it play out a little bit first, because I've seen it in myself,
Right.
pre salvation, especially, but even after salvation, the temptation there to manipulate is ever present.
Well, and I manipulate has a negative maybe layer to it, but I would even talk more of when you see a lot of entrepreneurs, they're creative and they're visionaries, and when your back's against a wall,
You find a way.
You're starting to look for every opportunity that's possible, and that's really what happened and started to develop for you and I. Obviously, when we were young,
Yeah.
it was maybe not in a positive sense at that point, but it has helped us to really start to look at all opportunities.
Yeah, I began to crave knowledge later as an adult, but for other reasons. But no, I can identify with all that. So to me, once you get to that point in your life, and gosh, I don't know where we're at on sheds just yet, but hang with us there, audience. I just feel like when you're at that point, it's almost like you wake up every day fighting for your life in some sense,
Right.
because that's really about the lowest, so you have no choice but to win the day. And I have that mindset when I get up every day now. I'm a tremendous supporter and fanatical listener of influencers, in the sense of positive influence,
Right.
Motivational videos. I absolutely just thrive and love listening to motivational videos, because it creates something inside of me to say, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go after it harder than I did yesterday. If I fail at something today, I'm going to go back and I'm going to figure it out. No
Right.
matter what it takes, I'm going to go back and I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to make a way. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to create something. If something doesn't exist, I'll go create something
Sure.
so that it exists. And I don't know. I'm thankful to have that attitude instead of that just sour Eeyore attitude that I had that I carried for so long.
Right.
I'd rather just be happy and
Right.
say, hey, let's go figure this thing out,
Right.
and learn from our failures in it. Gosh, what a good, me and you could really just sit and have a conversation, and we should off the air. Shed Geek Podcast. So we're talking about sheds. I mean, let's get into that. You're doing consultation. You do consultation in the shed industry.
Yes. A lot of the things that we do when we talk about doing consultation or consulting or working with a company. So a lot of what pushed me into this was when I was working with insurance clients, I would see young business people come in and try to start a business, and I'd help them find maybe a CPA and an attorney and get the right documents in place and make sure the contracts were, they had the correct insurance, and then 2 years later they're struggling and half of them are gone. And it wasn't benefiting me, and it wasn't really benefiting them because they came in with a lot of hope, left with a broken spirit, and had to carry that defeat a lot of times throughout the rest of their lives. So it resonated with me with some of the things I experienced and went through. So that's when I got into that piece of it. So what we will look at when we go in, and I've up to this point was primarily working alone. I mean, we do a lot of DISC personality assessments and things too, although that's not the backbone of what we do. It's an extra tool in our tool chest, and a lot of people are familiar with DISC personality assessments. That's why I bring that up. But we don't try to build a business model off of it. What we've come in and done really is though, we talk a lot about you can't improve what you don't measure. And so from a creative mind, sometimes we don't like to measure too strategically, but we really come in and help just do an overview. And it's amazing to me how many folks don't even know what their overhead is. We work with some Amish that, don't have access to, let's say, computers, things like that. So now we've got to have basically paper documents that they can do their spreadsheets and track their all their finances and things like that would maybe typically be done in QuickBooks. But there's just a lot of those hardworking people out there that then how do we build that structure? And they can build anything, plumb, wire, whatever, repair it. But we come in then and try to figure out what's the entire foundation of what's going on. And then we try to set clear goals and put the path together to achieve those goals. And a lot of times it can come down to certainly marketing is an aspect. It's the financial and just the business bookkeeping side of things, and then how the leadership side of how you set up your departments and create leadership. And some folks don't want to grow; they just want to become profitable. They want 3-4 employees, and that's fine, but they need to be profitable. Because if they don't sustain that, they still are not providing for their family. So,
are you a shed manufacturer, dealer, or hauler looking for a trusted resource to build or upgrade your website? Do you need a simple business website or a more robust and dynamic e-commerce site? Are you looking for an affordable option with digital marketing solutions for your small business? Are you looking for paid ads using Google search engines or social media platforms to reach a new audience? If you answered yes to any of these questions, it's time to check out Troyer Websites of Texas. Did you know that 46% of the 5.6 billion searches made each day are for local businesses? At Troyer's, our SEO strategies will help you get on the first page of search results for your shed business. At Troyer Websites of Texas, you will be sure to get 5-star customer service with proficiency and skill. Troyer Websites just launched their managed digital services to incorporate all your marketing needs into a single dashboard. Here at the Shed Geek Podcast, we trusted the team at Troyer Websites of Texas to develop our website, and we couldn't be happier with the results. To know more or schedule a discovery call, simply contact the Shed Geek at 618-309-3648 or email info@shedgeek.com.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a struggle to figure out where do I move forward with the dream and hope that the monetization figures itself out versus where do I create an effective strategy and, like you said, a path forward. And better yet, you have a target. You have some type of goal because if you go out and you start shooting into the air, you don't know what you're going to hit. But if you've got something you're shooting towards, that's what's measurable, is to be able to say, to me as a creative mind, to look out and say, can we hit this goal? How do we get there? How I do it is often times a little bit harder to pin down.
Right. The one thing we start with really is getting somebody to write out their vision statement. And that really starts on a personal level. And we've had people come back to me and go, I've got to change my business model because I'm not taking the business where I want to end up personally, and they realized maybe in the business side they were being very selfish.
Yeah.
But they really had the business to serve and provide for their family and
that's good.
Create freedom. So that's usually the first piece. And then we've got like 4 pillars of leadership we take them through. There's like 5 pillars in business operations, and it's everything from, yeah, like I said, the financing, the marketing, the people development, sales, and then the personal development pieces of it. And I'm missing one in there. But so we've got a lot of those things that we can go through on the, as far as like curriculum, as far as setting up orders. The interesting thing that has changed for us, and when I got into it, I was just a one-man guy doing this. So about 12 months ago, I reorganized some things and I started to bring people on. So today we've got a very high-level CPA that works with us, does a lot of benchmarking. We'll set it up to where, they'll do quarterly reviews, monthly, help people figure out their costs and their projections. Because I have a lot of people tell me, oh, we net 20%, 30%. Well, once we get finished with that, they're not even really breaking even. They're just in a cash flow that's keeping them afloat, and they really don't know the true cost. So it's hard for them to figure out their efficiencies. We have an HR portal that we now use. I have a person on staff that helps a lot with building out handbooks and just job descriptions and hiring, firing, and all those things that people run into. We have a sales program that's we have our own that'll be available in the next few months, and we have a coach or two that work strictly with sales. I do a lot of it as well. And then we have others that do one-on-one coaching. We do group coaching. We have peer groups. We do some masterminds with men and women. So if it's I can plug all that stuff. But I guess the thing that I would say that probably I will say sets us apart from all the rest, I run into other people and they kind of, with one person, tries to cover all of that. We can come in and really bring 5, depending on the size of your business and where you want to go, we can bring 5 specialized, highly trained or qualified people in and hit every aspect. And
that's very cool. I think. So what do you said something in that statement? You said what makes us different. So you recognize the importance of uniqueness, the importance of being different or being seen. What would make you say maybe stand out above the rest type of thing? I think that we've beaten this dead horse several times on the podcast. We'll probably hit it a few more times if I'm guessing, but the shed industry looks the same to a lot of businesses from our customers from the outside looking in. You go to 20 websites and almost everybody's going to say, we have the best quality in the industry. And we do have some amazing craftsmanship, quality built sheds in this industry. But it might not be separating yourself enough from everyone else. What kind of advice do you give to people in that situation?
I'll hear people sometimes say that, well, I'll let my quality speak for itself. The problem is your quality's only speaking to the audience that it has. That
appreciates it.
And if you're not out there marketing and doing the things you need, you're, really, then you're only hitting a small audience. And it's probably the people that drive by or have stopped in and bought a shed. But here's the fact of the matter. You can probably build the same 10 by 10 shed 4 different ways. And quite frankly, the quality is going to be decent on all 4 of those. And so then there comes in, and I don't like to use price, but it might be flexibility on extra features, things that you offer. I go back to, Henry Ford had a great model when he rolled out the automobile and made the assembly line. But the statement, you can have any color you want as long as it's black, just doesn't work today. And it didn't work back then either. It wasn't long he was changing that. But the fact of the matter is people want options and choices, but they want to connect with people and they want a good experience. But if you're going to figure out how to systemize and be effective and have a profitable business, part of that whole process of good quality is having good employees.
Hello, Shed Builder. This is the Shed Geek, here to tell you about one of the coolest things I've seen, the first of its kind, the Joey Pivot Lift. I have visited hundreds of shed manufacturing shops across the country, and one of the first things shop owners and shed builders mention is the amount of fatigue that is placed on the everyday builder. If you own a shed shop, you know that your builder is an asset to your future. With the Joey Lift, you'll see more production, and your builder will appreciate you investing in their well-being by replacing the thousands of steps they have to take up and down a ladder all day. The Joey Lift is perfect for shed builders, roofers, painters, and laborers working to add that special layer of detail on your shed. It's so easy, even a geek can drive it.
You know, I watched a couple of the Steve Jobs movies recently, and gosh, you just think about like how, I don't know if you've read like Simon Sinek's Find Your Why.
Yes.
Huge Simon Sinek fan, and just like the shorts and things that he does on TikTok and YouTube, and such a great business mind, at least for me, someone
Right.
that I identify with. He talks about Apple, Harley Davidson, John Deere, some big brands there that come to mind whenever you hear them. He talks about the simplicity of what Apple did. A good example is in your marketing. There's one thing to say, you know, we're Apple computers and we're creating a music device that you can carry around and listen to, maybe similar to the Walkman. But instead he said, you know, the iPod, 1,000 songs in your pocket. Now that people could relate to.
Right.
That people could understand. You could talk about how you did it, what you're going to do, all these different things. But why does it matter? It's 1,000 songs in your pocket. And that's all that message resonated to make, you know, the iPod one of the most highly sold musical instruments
Right.
and, you know, in all of our life. And I think it's the same way with, you know, maybe we're taking a big company like Apple and we're trying to bring that down to like your individual manufacturing location of sheds. But what exists for creativity there?
You know, there's a lot of things I think that exist that likely most of them don't think about. Because when I think of a small storage shed, I think of about a 10 by 12 with a hip roof, white, red, brown, painted, 2 doors on the front and a window in the back. But that's not even close to what they are today. I mean, they're like little greenhouses. They're, you know, they're offices. They're all kinds of different things. And I think it's ease of the customer service. The other side of it is you just can't price yourself out of it. I mean, it doesn't matter if we're building automobiles or what we're building. At some point, there is price points. So I think opportunities or options are what are huge. And what you just stated with Apple was he probably effectively wasn't creating something that was that much different than Sony.
Yeah.
But what he gave the audience that he was targeting was the option to have more options.
Yeah.
They had 1,000 instead of a CD and maybe a few more CDs in their backpack.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really where he was at.
That's the idea. Imagine carrying all, like I remember being a teenager and having these big bulky CD cases like in my car and that you're carrying around, and 1,000 songs in your pocket sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? It's like, wait a minute, how's that work? That's pretty cool.
You're just a kid then. We used to have these boxes of cassette tapes.
Oh, I had cassette tapes too. Yeah. I remember we had the cassette tapes too. Yeah, CDs were an upgrade at one point. Yeah,
Big upgrade.
Yeah. No, I think why is it important? I wanted to ask you this question. I'm trying to go back through and in my mind here, some of the stuff you said, I could really just take it and chew on it and go in probably 100 different directions. Why is it important to have goals? I mean, you're talking about setting a goal. If you don't know what your goal is, why is that important? Why is it important to write them down and see them realized and see like a trajectory that actually you're moving towards that goal, and how you can at some point say, hey, we're not going the direction that we thought we were going to go.
Right. Well, I think it's important for everybody to know what their why is in life, and they understand what their purpose is of being on earth. And there's often we can say, well, we hope this works out and we hope about this and that. But what we focus our attention on is what happens. But I will go back to Matthew 25:15 through 31. It's the parable of the talents. And I can promise you for myself and behind everything I do, when I come sliding in there, I hope I've got a broken leg, a busted knee, and a few bumps and bruises, but I want to know that I accomplished everything on this earth, the short time I'm here, that I was meant to accomplish. I don't need to show up and say, man, I went out to dinner with a ton of people and we had a great time. I mean, we're going to do all those things because those things, relationships are very important to me. But at the end of the day, how do I maximize everything I do? And I don't try to be so focused, although I'm a very, probably a bit of an aggressive personality, or hardworking was something that was kind of taught into me when I was young. But it's very important to me that if I have potential, I need to meet that potential. And so when I go back into consulting, I guess that's my goal, that I can, sometimes I have to elevate the belief people have in themselves so they can actually reach their potential, because other people did that for me. I had no idea that I could do what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
You know, that's a whole another hour of that.
No,
but,
for sure.
But
for
you know,
sure.
that's where I go back to, and I just go back to that parable. I'm not going to bury my talent. I'm going to maximize everything I have the ability to do, and I feel that I have a huge responsibility to accomplish that in my life. And having said that, yes, I have fun. I like to go hang out with friends and vacation and travel and do, you know, because those things are healthy. You have to have a balance in all of that. But if I look back, and that's, you know, there's people that listen to this probably that are not believers or believe in the Bible, and that's fine. I love everyone and work with all kinds. So got friends.
If they all did, what work would we be doing?
Right. I mean, I'm friends with atheists, whatever. And I value them for their perspectives and what I've learned from them. But at the end of the day, I think we can all come together, and I just used a Bible verse, but we all can come together and feel a lot more achievement and accomplishment if we really know what our focus and purpose is and what our vision is and what we're working towards. And so it's just a way to corral that.
No, for sure. And that'll build your goals out of that. You know, just knowing that will kind of set you on a course that says, this is what I want to do. This is the direction I want to go, not just with my business, but with my life. Where do you feel like life meets work? You know, we were talking a little bit about this off the air, even like with sheds, there's a lot of, during the pandemic, there was a lot of sheds sold, and they were home offices, you know, and, you know, the contrary to popular belief, you know, like most employees want to do good at their job. They want to do well for their boss. So they'll overcompensate, I feel like, when you're at home, and do more. And then you almost don't know when to shut it off. When is it work? When is it home? How do you identify those things, like in your business now? Because consulting is very broad.
It is. And it's and through COVID, I started working from home, and I still work from home a lot. I'll be in my offices some, but the good part is, for myself, I get a lot more done that way. The downside is learning when to shut it off. And it's an ongoing battle. I don't know that I have a good answer for somebody to just put out there and follow, because I think we're all so different and we're all created so different. But for myself, I think I've found a balance where I can shut it off. I've got a good friend that, there's times that she's talked about a little bit about, sometimes we try to compartmentalize, well, 8 to 5, we're going to talk work, and then from then on, we're not going to talk about it. Well, the fact of the matter is, work is really, especially if you're an entrepreneur and visionary, it's the fabric of everything you do.
Right.
I mean, I can be having dinner some evening and some idea, I see something and I'm like, that's it. You know, that's my next, I'm going to do that. So I think it's more finding a personal balance where you don't feel like, you can learn to feel that there's not a high level of stress and pressure on yourself continually, where you're in a healthy spot. I think that's where accountability of even just good friends. I had a pastor tell me once, he said, a good, honest, true friend is more valuable than any therapist you'll ever see.
Man, that's a good word.
So it's something I think we've got to have, that accountability in our life.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean, so to turn it on and off, I don't follow that rule anymore.
Yeah.
Because as a creative person, you know,
Yeah.
when the ideas are coming, they're coming.
Yeah, it's it becomes very tough to organize whenever, especially with social media. Like all the different platforms that are available now, and all of those lead into things like e-commerce. I mean, you might think that you're on Facebook and you're scrolling through your page just to socialize or just to catch up on the day, but the reality is so much of it is involving work that I almost have Facebook for the sole purpose of work almost at this point.
Yeah.
There's not too much socializing that I do. One thing I've tried to do is create a positive post once a day or a couple times a week that's something funny.
Right.
Even if it's just this simple, corny dad joke.
Right.
Because there's so much potential negativity that's on there.
Right.
That if you can bring a little bit of laughter to someone's day by just doing something as simple as sharing a meme or something that's funny.
And back to your question a little bit too, if there is any advice I'd give, when you are with somebody else or like you're breaking from that, be present with that. I don't enjoy if my kids come see me and then they're just on their phones.
Right.
They're out of the house now, they're older, but
Yeah.
I try to then make sure I've got my phone down and I'm asking questions and how's their day and week and month going. And so I guess it's more probably, I would challenge people to be present where they're at.
Yeah, there's a quote. I'm a paraphrase. We don't listen to hear. We listen to respond.
Right.
I'm very guilty of doing that because I've got all these preconceived notions about what the person's going to say, especially in sales. Don't we do that in sales really bad? We already know what they're going to say. I'm watching their body language. I see how they're shaking their head, not shaking their head. They seem frustrated at my answer. I'm trying to overcompensate.
Yes.
For my lack of communication. And it happens in personal life too, but really in sales, I see it happen so often. What advice do you give? Do you do like a discovery call initially? Is that how you get started?
Yes, we'll do a discovery call. We'll a lot of times send out a questionnaire. Depending on what type of things they're interested in, the questionnaire will be tailored towards that. Because, like I said, we can bring in 5 different experts, but we can also just target one smaller item if that's what they're wanting to work with. So we can really tailor packages anyway.
In a nutshell, what's the shed industry look like to you?
It's an interesting industry to me because there seems to be, I think, a disparity between the builders or sales lots that are doing really well, and then maybe the ones that are smaller and struggling. Because what has happened is there's been some players I've seen in the shed industry that have basically, they're probably not national, but they're very large regional. They'll catch maybe a whole Midwest or the East Coast, and they've got a large footprint. And if you're a small shed builder and those folks are in your area, you've got to take it seriously and figure out how you're going to compete. But being very docile and maybe just kind of, whatever, we've been here forever, we build quality, that's probably not going to bode well for you. Yeah. But there's a life expectancy out of every shed, and most people, when they're buying them, it's a window of time that they want it. It depends how often they move. They may not move it with them oftentimes, but it's an industry that I don't see go away. I think it's going to only I think a little bit of the RV industry when I think of the shed industry. Yeah. I see it probably tracking that direction, and you're going to see larger and larger shed builders, and you're going to see more automation and probably ways to enhance the production at a more consistent price. And with that happening, it's, if I give any advice to smaller builders, even if there's no larger competition in your area, if you want to keep them from coming, dominate where you're at.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. It's a great answer. There's a ton of fragmentation in the industry. One of the things that was most peculiar to me about getting in the shed industry is in taking some business classes and that you learn about just in retail things like net 30 and net 60 and net 90 and just in time inventory and all these different things. The shed industry is very unique in that you get into it and, hey, we'll bring you 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 buildings, with no like requirement on sales. I think some people have increased. I think you're starting to see less of that now.
Okay.
They started, buckling down on that a little bit and wanting to meet some requirements for this free inventory. But we don't all just purchase wholesale and then turn around and retail it or have a floor plan like a lot of big box stores do,
Right.
or automobiles do.
Right.
Doesn't that seem odd that it's, like you can get free sheds if you just sign on to become a dealer partner, and then it seems like there's very little skin in the game.
I would imagine that's going to change somewhat. I mean, RV does that as well some, but then there's maybe a 3-month period and then that's usually when you see the big slash of prices and things, because they're really trying to get, they're willing to just get it off so they don't have to pay for it. But I'd have to believe at some point that changes a little bit. But I think the one thing I'm seeing some of these larger shed building manufacturers, they're probably trying to really gain a lot of market share.
Mm-hmm.
And the economy will probably, this is just my prediction, the economy is going to dictate how long what you just said is going to continue.
Yeah.
Coming through COVID, the shed industry went crazy. I mean, I don't think anybody could prepare for that.
Right.
But we've seen tremendous growth that our shed builders had. And I think that's going to be a transition that's going to be a little bit interesting but they're still doing well.
Well, and we're sobering up now too, right? Like the 2-year high and peak or whatever that we had was over. And now it's like, hey, this is back to business as usual. And now we're back to trying to figure out the honeymoon's gone. How do we sell sheds again? How do we move sheds again? How do we perfect our labor process, our delivery process, our sales process? We were one of the few industries that really thrived during that time.
Exactly.
And I think in business, a lot of people are going to look back at that time, regardless of their opinion on COVID, their personal or political opinions on it. I think they're going to look back at that time and at least be able to identify it as a time of shift, especially in e-commerce, and how it sort of ushered in this new way of purchase, or at least this anticipated way of purchasing that customers want to shop a lot of times from home. Yet then at the same time, depending on the product, they want to come feel a tangible product that they can take home and see it.
That's interesting because when COVID hit, and I agree with you that honeymoon stage or the hangovers kind of worn off, it's I had contractors and shed builders that called me and go, what do we do? Uh-huh. And I was like, well, if your employees are willing to go to work, find creative ways how to communicate with homeowners and how you're going to do this. And we had multiples that seen 200% plus growth in that first year. I mean, they were going anywhere to buy material, because they were struggling to find it. And
supply chain became very difficult. Yeah,
but they just the ones that got creative, and then there were others that they kind of took a month off and didn't build much or do a lot of construction. So it's
when you have that creative mindset to say, hey, you're going to have to basically do something that's untested. You'll face some criticism.
Yes.
Right? This isn't tested, or you're not doing it the way I think you should do it. So it's not going to work. How do you help your clients overcome that?
Well, first off, we try to build where there's a strong, where they believe in where they're at and what they're doing, and build their confidence. And then we a lot of times try to look at what's creative, what can we do that's a little bit outside of the box to give us an edge. And a lot of times marketing is just huge in all of that, and very strategic. But it doesn't, just because you build sheds and now you go drop 4 off at a greenhouse down the road doesn't mean you're going to sell any. Let's find strategic areas, So we really try to put more of a strategic approach together so that they can start down that path and then keep the data. So many of them will maybe have half a dozen sheds at different places, but they don't even know which one's really selling the most.
Yeah.
There's just no data there. And so we really look at those things to try to help be more strategic in what their focus is.
You do consultation. The shed industry is part of that. Focus on your consultation. What, from your, with that eye, what is plaguing like the shed industry? What's one thing that really needs to change?
If there's, and I don't know if it's an industry wide, but I would say so many builders do not know what their actual overhead costs are, and they don't know where their numbers are at. And I think if they zone into that, and then they can, if I would challenge anybody, I'll throw this out there for free for everybody. If you can make the process very simple and have a lot of add-ons and accessories available, because a lot of people like options, and you're back to the e-commerce side of it. I know it's difficult depending on maybe culturally where you're at, but if you can partner with somebody that they can create that and do it for you, that's going to be huge, because there are people that just want to buy online and don't want to come in, but you've got to have the options. And the technology today, it's out there, and it's not that expensive. I used to pay $15,000 a year for a yellow page ad, half page.
Yeah, it's come a long way, hasn't it?
So it's people like options. The days of saying, well, no, this is what you want is over.
Right. Yeah.
It makes the client bristle almost.
Right. Yeah. Well, they're trying to view the uniqueness in who they are and why they're buying it. I mean, it's kind of like whenever you see like a bright purple shed or something, and you're thinking, "Gosh, somebody bought that." That's what they wanted. I mean,
probably was
that
custom
speaks
built
on their personality in some way, and that's a message that they're actually trying to put out. That like, hey, this is who I am, and maybe that says something. That's a vibrant, loud personality, that would have that. I don't know. But,
does that answer your question though a little bit
yeah,
about what
for
you're
sure.
seeing? Okay.
I think so. For me, I would say it's more of a larger answer that if I try to hone it down to specifically the shed industry, communication is really the key. So customer service, to me, that communication falls into that customer service area. Probably what I've been the most surprised about in being, I didn't grow up successful. I didn't grow up with in business and around successful business people. I've had to learn literally from 0% how to navigate my way through and different business minds. And I hear a lot of, this is one thing I hear in our industry a lot is, oh, that's just business, and it's kind of like confusing for me to separate that's just business with the person. Because to me, I build a relationship with the person, so it's hard for me to see just the business side of that. I want to know the whole person, and to me, the business person is part of what makes up who they are too. And I can't help but I'm dancing around it. Phone calls, communication, emails, return, emails. I try to make it a point to before I go to bed that night, I'm going to reach back out to whoever reached out to me. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm just saying I really try to make it a point.
Right.
I'm kind of amazed at how people leverage silence. And I'm assuming that's what they're doing, or it's just poor communication habits.
Well, I can tell you, and this is a little bit of a general, because I've seen the studies in different industries. But I can tell you, if somebody calls in and you can give them an approximate or an exact price and close the sale and give them all the information, and you have to ask good questions. I will go back to something you said earlier and come back to this or circle back here. When doing sales, we often have a mindset of what that client wants. And my first book I ever read on sales was Zig Ziglar's. I've read many copies, or given away many copies, read it many times, and he always said you're going to get you're going to have to ask for the sale 4 times. So as soon as they walked on, and I sold cars, so that's where I got my early training. So when they walked on, I'm like, oh, you're here to buy a car today. Well, if they said no, I missed my first one, and I'm halfway through getting kicked out of their life. But that was always my philosophy. Today, I just work on asking questions and engaging and keep asking questions. And people don't care how much you know, they care how much you care about them. And that's back to, you and I had this conversation earlier today, off the air, was connecting with people and the communication piece and relating. And if there's any advice I would give you as shed builders, the difference is if they call in and you respond and can give them the information they need, you've probably got about an 85% chance you're going to close the sale right on the spot, or you might have to check a few things and get back to them. And if you set the time to call them back within a reasonable, say 2 to 4 hours or next day, but you set the time you're going to call them back, you will close about 85%. If you take some information and say, well, let me look into it and see what we can do, and we'll get you some price, and then you say, I'll give you a call back, and you call them back next week, you're down to about a 14 to 16% close rate. It changes that quickly, and it's back to the communication, and I'm with you on the phone calls. I have people call me when I'm on the phone. My phone's going, as we are on this.
Yeah.
But before,
I'm missing calls right now, and I'm thinking to myself, when I get in the car, I'm going to return those phone calls. And when I get to a place where I can be silent, I can text and email. But at least my mindset is maybe moving, towards making sure to get back and answer with them in a timely manner.
Sometimes it may even just be a text saying, hey, I've got a bunch of meetings going on right now. When's a good time, or can I have somebody else reach out?
Over communication.
Yes.
I believe that people in this industry prefer over communication, and I would encourage them that their customers, in my opinion, most of the time want the same thing. Just touch base. Hey, just wanted to let you know we actually started your shed, building your shed today. Just instill some kind of confidence in them.
Well, here's one. So if they're ordering a shed, and in that first phone call, one of the questions I would ask, how would you like to communicate with us when you do business with us? If we give you updates before we're even finalized on your buying a shed, if we're going to give you updates, do you want text messages, phone calls, or emails?
Yep.
Well, this already tells you you're going to have some good customer service, and you've got to deliver it. But at that point, before you ever sold the shed, you've already got that. And at that point, some of that communication can happen very easily with somebody in the office. It doesn't have to be you, the salesperson itself. It can be. But as those processes move through, at the end of the day, when soccer mom gets up in the morning, she's got to drop the kids off, take one to a doctor's appointment. She's got to take the dog to the vet, and she's got a list that she's going to accomplish. Or dad has a list that he's trying to accomplish on phone calls on his way to work or the way home or over his lunch hour. They just want to accomplish the task.
Yeah.
And studies show that if you can reach back to this, that's why I'm so adamant about the communication piece. If they show that you can either answer their question and solve their problem within 10 to 15 minutes, or prove to them that you're going to, and you're a responsible, reliable source to do that, then they can check that off their box because they know it's being handled. But if you can't transmit that assurance that you're going to take care of them, whether it's in a sales role, customer service, whatever it is, in probably 10 to 15 minutes, and a lot of times you actually have 60 seconds to do that, to make the initial impression. But then they'll give you 10 to 15 minutes to go through some things. And if they don't have the time, at least you can set an appointment to do that. That's where the difference is. But if they hang up with you and there's no confidence that it can happen, or even if there's an email or a text and it doesn't get responded to for 3-4 days, they're going to keep going down the list.
Sure. Yeah, and follow-up's a good thing. I mean, I believe that you can go back and do sales from follow-up. And if you stay consistent, I had one guest that said, we go back 8-10 times and continue to connect with the potential client and say, what has your situation changed?
Right.
You were obviously inquiring about a shed because you wanted a shed. Some people say, oh no, you're just harassing people if you go back 8 and 10 times. It's so funny because I'll get different stories. Some people say, yeah, I'll never buy a shed from them now because I've already told them no 3 or 4 times and they continue to call me. Whereas other people will say, thank goodness they stayed committed and in regular communication because I actually needed that nudge. It's something I wanted, but they were just there at the right time to remind me, hey, are you still looking at this? You know what, I am. And you're the one who's going to get the sale because you're the one doing the follow-up.
Right.
And
there again, it can be back to communication. it doesn't mean it's even a phone call always.
Yeah.
It might be they're looking for a niche shed, or
Right.
you've got a special on something and you shot that out. And
I just think that in business, it seems like, like shed folks are some of the hardest to sell to. Sometimes they
what's interesting?
the requirement, that they put you through if you try to sell them something is sometimes a little different than their customer.
It's interesting because I have some people that love to do the one-on-one, have people come on the lot, and they feel like that's how they can sell. There's another sales guy I'm thinking of right now. He sits in an office. In fact, during COVID, he had his best ever, and he worked from his kitchen table. And he prefers to never have somebody come in because they are, and they've built out a really good website and a process, but they will, he does everything online. Because he says if they come in on the lot, I can handle about 4 to 5 a day and make that many successful sales. He said, I can whip out quotes and do everything electronically and put out 20.
Yeah.
He said, I'll bury anybody who thinks he's got to have them on there because he just wants to hit the, and he's on, either on the phone or email, text.
Yeah. Man, we may have to do a round 2. Final thoughts, greatest piece of advice you could give to someone in the shed industry right now?
I would tell them to keep an open mind, and every opportunity and possibility should be on the table at all times. And that's just kind of business in general. But it's a changing evolution. I remember back when my father got his first calculator and never trusted it. You said you've only used a computer for about 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
I will tell you the way we do business today is not how we'll do it in 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of how we can stay with the trends and how we market and communicate that will make all the difference in the long-term success. So be open-minded.
Man, that's great. If someone wants to reach out to you, what's a good way to get in touch with you?
I'm on about every social media platform, but Gary Bontrager Consulting. We have a website. You can find all our platforms, our podcasts, everything out there. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok. I mean, you name them, they're out there. LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But our information's out there. Reach out. We're happy to have a visit. We'll do a free introductory consult and see if it's even a fit. I believe a lot in personalities connecting and meshing, and it's just because we talk about company culture. But really, whether you and I have a long-term relationship depends on how our cultures and our personalities mesh. And so we're not for everyone. We know that. But if our culture matches your culture in your business, then that's when you'll have your success. So,
man, that's great. I appreciate you letting me come up here, do my first interview as a interviewee. That was nervous and nerve-wracking and everything, and I enjoyed it. I really feel like we could do a series at some point, or who knows, we'll figure something out. But I sense that we have a friendship in the future in the making, and want to support you in any way that I can do that. Guys, feel free to give Gary a call. I've certainly enjoyed my time here with him today, and I suspect that it'll be a good discovery call if you take that step. So thanks, man. I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, this space is beautiful. This is really awesome.
I know. It's an awesome studio, isn't it?
All right. Thank
again. You.